Hello everyone, this is Malishka.
And I'm Avnish.
And today joining us is Sarthak Parashar, an Indian Forest Service officer. He is also a passionate storyteller and a novelist and a wildlife enthusiast. And he has formerly served with the Ministry of Home Affairs as an Assistant Central Intelligence Officer and also formerly served with the Forest Department of Government of Uttarakhand. Hello sir, welcome.
Hello.
On the behalf of IIT Roorkee, I welcome you to this session. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
So my first question is, what were the major motivation and factors that led to the transition of you from a stable 9 to 5 job to UPSC preparation that require 24/7 dedication?
Yeah, first of all, I think it is my background did help. My parents were doctors in government service, so I sort of grew up in government job centric environment. And I'm still in 9 to 5 job only. But I guess you're talking about being from a private sector to this line. See, I guess you all are in that phase of your life, the most bubbling, most energetic phase of your life. So this youthful energy you have, you want to do something with that, and I guess private sector does offer a very good outlet to that energy, very intellectual space. But I wanted to do something very particular with that. I had something in mind, what I wanted to do with my life, how I wanted to spend that energy. Maybe that's the best way to say. And I thought that public service and specifically forest service would offer me a better chance to devote in that space. So I think it was motivation enough. I worked in MNC for around 2 years, and it gave me enough time to analyze and understand and decide for myself that I wanted to be somewhere else. So yeah, it was impetus enough for me.
So we know that UPSC is one of the toughest exams to crack in the country, and a lot of people spend a lot of years in preparation for this exam. So what was your journey like? How did you prepare for this exam? What was your strategy when you were preparing for it?
Strategy, I guess. So of course there is a very conventional route for that, and everybody I guess follows that. You start with the basics. You strengthen your basics for NCRTs and other stuff. You take help of coaching in some aspect to understand something. You do your newspapers. You are up to date with your current affairs. Then there are several stages of examination. There's a preliminary examination, then a mains, and then interview. Like for prelim, there's a strategy of revising a lot. For mains, there's a strategy of writing a lot. 2 hours, one of our teachers used to tell me. But I think that is just a theoretical aspect of it. In reality, the thing is it takes time, and the most important aspect I guess there was that you as a human being, you are not a machine. You cannot just consistently be in that flow. You are an emotive human being. You feel things. You go through several phases of your life. Your life is moving while the preparation is stopped there. So you have to be able to sail through that phase. You have to be emotionally stable, and I think I learned it the hard way. But I learned that I need to focus on that part first, and that is very important. To be in an emotional state, to be in a mental state where you can not be affected so much by external happenings, and of course a bit of luck is anyways involved.
Sir, as we hear the term UPSC means a UPSC job, it seems so glamorous from outside. So I would like to know about your role as an Indian Forest Service officer. What is the day-to-day your work looks like?
The Indian Forest Service officer is like what the name signifies. You are in charge of a forest. That is the first part, and it involves a lot of things, very interesting things. Going inside forest, you are in charge of a particular division of forest, and you have to take care of that division. That means the trees that are there, they remain that way. There are no many external influences are limited. The wildlife in that area, they are conserved, and also the people who are living in the forest, and they have always been an important part, but in the last few decades, couple of decades, they have taken a more central space. There's a scheduled tribe and other traditional forest dwellers recognition of rights act. So now it has been understood that they are also an integral part of the forest and integral manager of the forest. So we have to work in tandem with them, and that is another aspect. But again, forest is the first part. The second part is officer, and as an officer, you're a bureaucrat, and the main role of bureaucrat is to uphold and execute the rules and laws of the country, and that is what we do. There are certain laws and rules already in place with respect to preservation of trees, conservation of forests, protection of environment, conservation of wildlife, etc. And we make sure that all those rules are followed properly. It sounds like a very bureaucratic thing, but yes, there is a lot of emotions involved. Your workplace is literally the forest. You travel inside the forest a lot. You become one with that. You feel the pulse of the forest and the people living there, and you become a part of it. So that is one of the better parts of this.
So, could you expand a little more on what challenges you face on a regular basis in environmental conservation, especially in Himachal Pradesh?
So there are certain challenges that a forest officer faces day to day. That is, a forest by its nature, the most important thing, is not a very strictly objective entity. It's a very subjective entity. It's a very dynamic entity. Forest, the engineering is little more complicated because this is a system that predates us by billions of years, and we are only a small part of that. So it's a very complicated system to be able to understand it. There are rules, sort of, you can say, but there are more exceptions to that than generally gets followed. So to be able to understand that, to be able to adapt yourself to changing situation, that is a big challenge. With respect to Himachal Pradesh, I guess it's a double-edged sword. There is one particular aspect of it which is also one of the biggest challenge, but also at the same time it's one of the biggest assets we have, and that is the terrain, the difficulty it poses. Mountainous terrain always, right? If I see that particular tree over there and I notice something is happening, I can just right away go there and sort it out. Yes, Himachal Pradesh and Himalayan state, they add a third dimension to the situation, right? So something that is just nearby is not so nearby. Yes. To traversing that point is difficult. Sometimes that place, it's such a slope that you just cannot reach there at all. So managing forest on foot, and you have to go there, that becomes a bit of a challenge, especially for an understaffed state like Himachal Pradesh. At the same time, it's an asset also because that prevents the miscreants also from doing any harm there. And right now, however, there is a lot of development happening in Himachal Pradesh, infrastructural development. Our road network is expanding at a very good pace. So it is going to change situations both for us and the miscreants as well. So we'll see about that.
Sir, talking about the tech domain, sir, most of the student here, there is a buzz among the student regarding the AI, and they are trying to implement AI in each and every aspect and see how can we possibly solve the problems that were not as easy solvable by the traditional means. So where do you see the intersection between the AI and the environment? What do you see where can it be deployed?
Well, of course, AI is pervading every aspect of our life, whether we want it or not. And in forestry also, in environment protection also, it has been. We are using it at certain aspects, like certain automated camera traps are there, which can recognize species on their own. There's no human interface involved. In forest fire mapping, which is a major problem, especially in mountainous states like Himachal and Uttarakhand, AI is being used to be able to find the hotspots. But at a core level, I can explain what the potential that AI has is that any system you see, like a camera that is recording us, you can automate certain things. It works in a very specific way. Environment, forests, wildlife do not follow any systematic patterns. Yes. They are not that objective, like I said. They're very subjective. Even this tree, I can set up an automated system to water it, like 10 milliliters of water every few seconds, something like that. That might not work with every tree. You need to be there to be able to see and understand that, which requires a human element. And AI can bring that human element, that complexity, that dynamism of forests and wildlife and nature in general, that can be, I think, better understood by AI than any other automated system that we have.
What I can see that we can employ a combined system of human intervention along with the AI. That will be the best possible way.
Of course, that goes with any technology. But I'm saying AI can replace humans more and more. Suppose we have an automated system in place, we need a forest guard to be on the ground to be able to imply that. And that's the problem. There we have limitation of human resources. So maybe AI can do that. We will not be requiring that forest guard on the ground. There's a very inaccessible place. For instance, I told you about Himachal, that it is inaccessible. Yeah. So maybe we can have certain drones which can, do all that work of, monitoring a particular area, maybe identifying any conflict zones, and maybe taking some basic actions on that without any human interference on that level. So that is what I'm trying to say here.
So could we talk a little bit more about your work as an author? You've published a book, Children of Manasvi. So what motivated you to venture into writing and becoming a novelist?
Yes, I was always a little more imaginative child. अपनी दुनिया में खोया रहता था, as they say. And I was very lucky to have parents who really nurtured that aspect of me. And I used to write in my school days. I was part of a theatre group in my college days. I used to write stories for them. I used to write for some short films also. And when I got placed, I just decided one day to start writing a novel. I wrote a novel. It was based on my love for writing and my love for wildlife. So if I have to tell one line I have to tell about a novel, it's about a 10-year-old girl who finds the last tiger cub on earth. I struggled a lot, I would say. It's not like I imagine in my mind that I'll finish a novel in 6 months, and next 6 months it will be published, and next 6 months it will be national bestseller, 2 saal baad it will be international bestseller, New York Times, whatever. You think all those things that you write. It didn't go like that, of course. It took me a long time to finish the novel. Then I ran behind several agencies and publishing houses. Some didn't even read the script. But then there's a Jaipur Literature Festival that happens every year, and they had a sort of a open contest sort of thing, and they said my entries, and I was selected, and they invited me, and there I got a chance to pitch to the certain publishers, and I was very fortunate to find a very competent publisher who had that faith in my work, and they published my novel in 2019, and it was launched in Jaipur Literature Festival itself. So I'm still pursuing that, this hobby of mine, this passion of mine, and let's see where it goes.
So actually, I have read your book and not completed, but I'm in the process of.
I'm
But
most thankful.
and
Thank you very much.
as per what I can see, that it is a book that must be read by each and every person who is willing to save the planet, because the narrative that you have given in the book is something that is required, that is the need of the hour. So I want to ask my next question over there, that after joining the Indian Forest Services, has been any change in you regarding how you see the overall picture of the forest or the wildlife?
It's a very good question, honestly. So, with regard to my perspective of environmental, of course, it has changed. I guess where earlier it was a little more romanticized version, it is more pragmatic now. It is more nuanced now. That there are a lot of machinery, a lot of stories going on. There's no one story. There are multiple stories going on interwoven, and still trying to untangle them. That in the forest, and that different people have different needs. There are no clear-cut, protagonists and antagonists like in a story in the forest. Everybody is trying to meet their ends, and whether it's the wildlife, the animals, the trees, the locals who are dependent on that, the tribals, and even the forest personnel who are on the ground. So, and I'm still learning that. That is for sure, and that has only made my resolve to understand this, to bring out these stories even made it stronger. I'm more into it now than I was maybe before.
And has that influenced your writing as a novel in the same you pitch in your book?
So, of course, I will say the environment you are in, what it does to a writer is like the sunlight on the tree. What it does to a tree, to a plant. You need to bask in a very rich sunlight to be able to grow properly. Similarly, as a writer, the place you're surrounded by, the people you're surrounded by, that is definitely a very important factor. And this job does offer a very beautiful environment in that regard. There is this thing that when you're in a city, when you're surrounded by people, there's a lot of noise around, and your thinking is also very much influenced by that. And it's a good thing to some extent, but I think you do need some quiet time. When you go on morning walk alone, I guess you can see that the thoughts that come in your mind are much richer. They're more unique compared to thoughts that you'll have on a day-to-day basis. So I guess a forest job offers, not just forest job, but being inside a forest in that environment offers that kind of a quiet to your mind. It gives a freedom to your thoughts to express themselves. Let's see where it kind of stories come out of that.
So, sir, do you have a memorable experience that you have probably had while visiting a national park or a wildlife sanctuary?
In our training, forest IFS training, they take us, we have around 4 months of tours only to different North India tour, South India tour, East India, West India, and we see different kind of forests. And of course, there are some very memorable sights. Like the first time you see a tiger in the wild, that is going to be one. Because first time you see an elephant herd going through, those are going to be when you enter the quiet of the forest. But I guess one experience that I can share is that really impacted me. It was in Annamalai Tiger Reserve. It's in Tamil Nadu, and there is a place called Top Slip. It's a small camp, and it's nestled inside the deep forest, rich forest. So we're staying there at night, and around 5 a.m. or sometime when the first light is not just hit, it is still dark. I remember I ventured outside, and for some different reason, and what I could see was that there were these lights lit up across the gaps between those trees, and they were a herd of cheetal deer, and it was not 10, 20, I think there were hundreds of cheetal deer, and in between them there was a herd of gaur, that is a wild buffalo. And if you have seen a gaur in the wild, you'll see the majesty they bring, and they were just still looking at me. They had noticed me, I could tell that, and they were just still looking at me. There was a moment of magic there, the nature's beauty in that stillness, and they are observing you. And there was a male gaur, I guess he was standing a little ahead of others, and it's a majestic creature. And it was not the right thing, but I just stepped a little near, and the moment I stepped, it produced a strong snorting voice, a warning sound.
Kind of warning.
It was a very scary thing. I stumbled a little bit. It snorted, it turned around, and it fled. And everybody fled, right? And it was like those bubbles you see, right? They're floating in the air, and the moment you touch them, they just burst. It was that kind of a magical moment. I don't know, it's stuck with me for some reason.
So moving ahead, I would like to talk about the people of the forest. They are the most connected to the environment over there. So any experience with the people and what are their perspective with their homeland? Means nowadays we see that deforestation, many of the people have to change their homes. So any point of view on them, what they feel, how they are connected with the nature?
So of course the traditional forest dwellers, the tribals, they are more in sync with forests than we are. Maybe we too were at a time, but now we have lost that connection, and they have survived that way for a long time. So they know how to live in tandem with that. Their lives are interdependent, and that way they have a more deeper respect for forests than the superficial ones that society has. And my interaction with them has also been very rich in that regard. Whether it was in our several tours, whether it was in Panna Tiger Reserve, where we saw Panna Tiger Ranthambore, where all these tribals are now turned into guides. Whether it is in Himachal Pradesh, the Gaddi tribe and several tribes who are, who are shepherds come forest dwellers. So their knowledge of forest, their understanding is very unique, and we can learn a lot from them. That is a fact. But the thing is that our forests have a limit to what they can tolerate, the kind of pressure, that how much human pressure they can tolerate. And maybe at a time they could tolerate the kind of pressure that normally people had. Now we have exceeded that far beyond, right? And we want to make sure that the people who are living their life in sync with forest have been living like that for a long time. They continue to play a role in that forest, and that is why, like I said, we have a very prominent act, which is the Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Rights Act, which make them a stakeholder in the forest conservation, forest management. But we also want to make sure that people other than those people who are not really dependent on forests anymore, who have become mainstream, and there should be some regulation as to what, how much pressure they can put on the forest, how much they can take out of forest. And sometimes that gets good thing can get manipulated to do something. That can be an issue. And to be able to distinguish between people who are really in sync with forest living there and people who have maybe moved out of forest and not dependent, but now they are staking claim. That is a very tough task, and that is an important task, because again, forest can only take so much. If you extract a few twigs from the forest, if I give you some branches to maybe construct, that is good. But if I give you permission to cut down all the forest altogether to sell that as a timber market somewhere, then that can be a little problematic. Now the last thing you talked about was displacement of people. Now that is of course a big issue. We can see the bigger picture that the positives is going to have for the economy, for the country, which is a very important thing. But from the point of view of the people whose lives are getting displaced, now that is a sensitive thing. And we have certain laws and rules in place to make sure that process is fair, that they get properly compensated, and that displacement happens only in the most critical area. There is a lot of misinformation about it also. People think that forest dwellers cannot reside in forests, that is, they cannot reside in sanctuary, national park. It is not so. We have provisions to allow people to live there in certain protected areas with certain limitations. Yes. In reserve forests also, they have certain rights as per the acts also. However, we have also realized that there are certain critical areas. For instance, with respect to tiger reserves, we have something called critical tiger habitat, and we understand in there we need an inviolable space. That there, in those very extreme cases, we do need an environment where there is no human interference at all. And in only those places we are trying to, and that also in a very consensual manner, not at all in a coercive manner. That is again an ongoing process. That is a process that requires a lot of discussion, dialogue, and understanding from both sides. And that is, I'm very optimistic that is happening right now.
So from your books and after today's session with you, my perspective with the forest and the nature has been shifted a bit. And I think once I'll get to read more about your work, the thing is that I might get connected to the forest as much as you do. And thank you so much.
I'll be very happy to know that.
And this was really a thoughtful session with you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Most thankful.